Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be speaking about an Arab file. Today we'll be speaking about the Arab ministerial meeting that took place in Qatar recently, in which they discussed consolidating solidarity and one's stance towards challenges facing the region, particularly the outside or the foreign interference in the region. They also held an extraordinary meeting that tackled the Renaissance or the Ethiopian disputed dam and heralded their support for Egypt and Sudan's water rights, and called on the UN Security Council to discuss the dispute over the Ethiopian plan to fill joint dam or the second filling without a binding and legal agreement. We'll be speaking about that in our episode. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Upon directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the armed forces moved the Egyptian ship Halayib heading for Beirut carrying humanitarian aid to Lebanon. Lebanese officials expressed their appreciation for the continuous Egyptian support for Lebanon amid current crises facing the country. A Palestinian ministerial delegation headed by Deputy Prime Minister Ziad Abu Amr held meetings with Egyptian officials in Cairo on Tuesday as part of joint coordination for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip under an initiative by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Abu Amr conveyed Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's appreciation for President el-Sisi, hailing the significance of Egyptian-Palestinian partnership in all fields. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry reiterated on Thursday Egypt's strong belief in the United Nations Charter and goals. Speaking during the Foreign Ministry's celebration marking the World's Day for Peacekeeping, the top diplomat vowed to continue to work with partners to support pillars of peace and stability around the globe. World powers agreed to provide support for the Lebanese army at a meeting on Thursday, aiming to prevent the military from collapsing, but stopped short of announcing tangible aid and said that the country's economic and political crisis worsens. France has sought to ramp up pressure on Lebanon's politicians after failed attempts to rally them to agree a new government and launch reforms to unlock foreign cash. Discontent is brewing among Lebanon's security forces over a currency crash that has wiped out most of the value of their salaries. To tackle that, Paris organized a virtual meeting with partners including the United States, Russia, China, and the European powers on some Gulf Arab states. Lebanon's pound has lost 90% of its value against the dollar since the late 2019 in a financial meltdown that poses the biggest threat to the stability since the 1975 to 1990 civil war. Gulf Arab states said on Thursday that it would be dangerous to separate global powers' nuclear deal with Iran from Tehran's missile program. World powers and Iran entered the sixth round of talks in Vienna on Saturday to revive the 2015 nuclear pact with Saudi Arabia and its allies opposed for not tackling their concerns and which the United States abandoned in 2018. Gulf Arab foreign ministers urged the powers to secure a deal with stronger restrictions and a longer duration, and to link it with practical steps to build trust in order to prevent an arms race and further conflict in the region. Saudi Arabia's air defenses intercepted a drone launched by Yemen's Houthi group on Thursday towards Khamis Mushid, home to the main Saudi air base in the border region. A Houthi spokesman said on Twitter that his group launched 2 drones at military positions inside Abha International Airport west of Khamis Mushid. In another development, the Yemeni branch of Al-Qaeda has kidnapped 6 government security personnel, the first incident of its kind in years in a country where years of conflict has created a humanitarian crisis.
Right, welcome back. And to highlight the ministerial meeting, or the Arab League ministerial meeting that took place in Qatar, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, madam.
Your Excellency, starting from the very beginning, where Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry delivered a message from President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to the Qatari Emir, conveying his greetings and inviting him to Egypt. How do you view the scene? How do you view measures that are taken in order to be able to comply or carry on with the Ula declaration that was signed in January?
Well, I guess all the signatory countries of Al-Ula Declaration back in January 2020 are working on carrying out the commitments, their respective commitments in the framework of this declaration. And of course, it was a declaration for a reconciliation, an all-out reconciliation among the 5 countries. And in the case of Egypt and Qatar, the Qatari Minister of Foreign Relations already visited Cairo and handed a message to President Sisi from the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim. And Sheikh Tamim invited President Sisi to pay an official visit to Qatar. And the Egyptian Foreign Minister went to Qatar for 2 reasons, one bilateral and the other one a multilateral. The one bilateral, you just mentioned it. He held discussions with his Qatari counterpart, and as well he met the Emir of Kuwait, the Emir of Qatar, and handed him a message from the President expressing satisfaction on the progress that Qatar and Egypt have made so far in improving their relations based on Al-Ula Declaration, and inviting the Emir of Qatar to pay an official visit to Egypt. And the two sides recommitted themselves to working on some issues, some questions in bilateral relations, with the aim of restoring the relations to the pre-boycott level.
If I may ask you here, there was this important meeting between the 2 top diplomats, the Egyptian and the Qatari, where they discussed the outstanding issues between Egypt and Qatar in order to follow up or to continue following up with mechanisms to resolve any sticking points or to resolve all matters. Let me take your reading to what are the still the issues that are that needs to be resolved. How would the return in relation between Egypt and Qatar be in favor of the Arab Commonwealth?
The sheer fact that there have been 2 official visits between the 2 countries at the foreign minister level testifies to the fact that the 2 countries share a political will to restore their relations to the pre-boycott level. You may recall that there were, back in June 2017, when the 4 Arab countries, 3 Gulf countries and Egypt severed diplomatic relations with Qatar, there were almost 13 demands. So some of the issues that you just referred to are related to these demands. Just to give you an example, how the media would cover the foreign policy and the domestic policies of the respective countries, things of the kind. But I'm sure that a lot has been done to improve relations between the 2 countries, and we are waiting. As a matter of fact, we are waiting for the nomination of the respective ambassadors of Egypt and Qatar to each side's capital. And once we reach the stage, I guess it would be behind us. The years of the boycott would be behind us, And let me emphasize one point, Madam, if I may. What we had seen before was not the rule; it was the exception. And now I guess there is all Arab countries realize that there is no point of boycotting each other, and they better work together, cooperate together, and understand the differences that could separate them on certain issues. It's only normal for countries to have different points of view, but this divergence in positions should not be an invitation to the severance of diplomatic relations or to mutual media campaigns that vilify the other party. So I'm personally speaking, I'm really satisfied, really happy that at long last, now we are on the right track as far as the Egyptian-Qatari relations are concerned.
Yes, here I may ask you, sir, about how, or about this meeting, because this is the first visit by an Egyptian foreign minister to Qatar since the signing of Al-Ula agreement, as you said, respectively in January 2020, and the end of a diplomatic row or this travel boycott by the Arab Quartet, and the return gradually in relations between the those Arab countries. Let me here see or read with you the atmosphere of this important ministerial meeting that took place in Qatar. I'm not speaking now about the extraordinary one, but rather this, the ministerial one that discussed means of dealing with some of the challenges in the region that are threatening its peace and security. So you're reading and the agenda of this important meeting and the importance of consolidating an Arab common work at this very particular time.
Well, the ministerial meeting in Doha, Qatar, was a consultative meeting that was called by a formal meeting of the Arab foreign ministers some time ago. And the purpose of this consultative meeting is to hold consultations among Arab foreign ministers concerning the way forward in dealing with the challenges to Arab security and how to deal with a host of questions and problems that are left over from the years of the so-called Arab Spring, like the situation in Libya, situation in Syria, situation in Yemen, and the Palestinian problem, of course. So the world scene is rapidly changing. The regional scene is changing. So the Arabs should act accordingly. And I guess the meeting reflected this realization on the part of Arab countries. This was a consultative meeting. Let's hope that the points that were raised, the agreement that they reached, would see the light of day in the months to come. They have demonstrated enough political will to move forward. Now let's wait for actions on the ground to solve all the problems that have faced the Arab world and have posed a serious problem for the Arab national security. And in fact, these unsolved questions, these crises have opened the door for regional and foreign intervention in Arab affairs. Mm-hmm. So I personally believe that the time has come for the Arab countries to end this sad chapter in contemporary Arab history.
You here pinpointed your finger at my next question, which is one of the top files or the top priority files that were discussed during this meeting was the foreign interference in the Arab regional security matters, or the foreign interference into the regional matters. How do you view such a file? What do Arabs need to deal with at this upcoming stage? How are, or what are the means of pushing the international community towards regarding the threats by such foreign interference?
Well, my first response would be quite simple. Let's work with the international community in implementing Security Council resolutions on Syria, Libya, Yemen, and the Palestinian problem. If the Arab countries could come together and have a unified position of how to move in implementing and carrying out these resolutions, I guess that would be a big step forward. Yes. Secondly, and before doing that, the Arab countries should have a common stand on what steps should be taken to solve Arab crisis. Of course, the Arab solutions should be in accordance or should be in line with the Security Council resolutions. The third thing is that the Arab countries or some Arab countries should not align with foreign powers or regional powers against one another. So this is the roadmap that I propose, and let's wait and see in the days and the months ahead whether the agreements at the consultative meeting of the Arab foreign ministers in Doha would be put in practice or not.
Right. Ambassador Hussein Hariri, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you,
before we continue on with our episode and the extraordinary meeting that took place on the sidelines of the ministerial meeting in Doha, let's watch this report.
The Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Gheit said that the Arab foreign ministers are calling on the UN Security Council to discuss the dispute over Ethiopia's plan to fill its dam on the Blue Nile. Meeting in Qatar, the ministers agreed on a number of measures to be taken gradually in support of Egypt and Sudan to solve the dispute. They called on Ethiopia to refrain from any unilateral steps that would harm Egypt and Sudan's water rights. The Arab League said in a statement that such steps include completing the second phase of the filling of the dam's reservoir during the rainy season this year without an agreement on filling and operating the dam. Sudan and Egypt already agreed this month to work together on all levels to push Ethiopia back to negotiations for a binding and fair agreement. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry attended the extraordinary session of Arab foreign ministers in the Qatari capital Doha. Meanwhile, the Egyptian top diplomat delivered a message from President Sisi to the Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, which included an invitation to visit Egypt. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ambassador Ahmed Hafiz said that the message also included valuing the importance of coordination to boost bilateral ties in the coming phase. He said the message expressed hope to continue with reciprocal steps for cooperation mechanisms to strengthen the bilateral ties within the framework of Al-Ula statement. The Qatari Emir delivered his greetings to President Sisi and expressed appreciation for positive developments on bilateral ties.
Right, welcome back. And Arab states are calling on the UN Security Council to discuss the dispute over Ethiopia's plans to make the refilling or the second filling of the dredge or the Ethiopian dam on the Blue Nile. And they have called on Ethiopia to negotiate in good faith and refrain from any unilateral steps that would harm Egypt and Sudan. They also have given all their support for the Egyptian and Sudanese water rights. To highlight this extraordinary meeting that took place in Qatar, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. We're speaking here about this extraordinary meeting that took place in Qatar upon the request of Egypt and Sudan. And how did you read the message that came after this meeting and the Arab support?
We received several messages, as a matter of fact. The first message is to us Egyptians, because some of us was questioning about the real stand of the Arab world in this specific case, the High Dam of Ethiopia, whether they stand with us or what. And some people are complaining that some Arab countries are financing some projects in Ethiopia. So what? Egypt is financing projects in Ethiopia because we want to encourage Ethiopia to realize that a peaceful solution for this problem would be better for all the parties. This is the first message to Egyptians. The second was to Ethiopia itself, that the whole Arab world will be standing by the Ethiopia aimed for development, whether it is electricity or the River Nile or any project. We are ready to be in a very good relation with them and to finance whatever projects we agreed upon. Third, it was to the whole world that we are serious about this problem, that we send a message to the Security Council to make the Security Council also aware of what is going on. Another message to the African Union, because we need an active role of the African Union in this concern. Maybe some brotherly talks between African and African, it would lead to something positive. The whole matter also, I feel that we are leading a very subtle diplomacy and very quiet diplomacy. We are not nervous about the matter because, in my humble opinion, that technically there isn't a real problem. The water coming through rains over Ethiopia is 1,600 billion cubic meters of water. We need 55 billion. So this is number one, which makes me a little bit satisfied. Second, the dam is to generate electricity. You cannot generate electricity if you do not use the water to go from south to north. Then the water will come. Also, the dam is built in the north of Ethiopia. And of course, according to the natural situation of the land, the water wouldn't go from north to south. The nature is against this. The water will go always from south to north.
Yes.
Another point, some people are telling us that Ethiopia will keep the water there. How to keep the water there?
I have no idea whatsoever, because I don't know how will ever anybody in the world would hinder the natural flow of of a river.
We have two technical points we must be seriously discussed. First, how long it would take to fill the dam, because if they are in a hurry, this will affect, of course, for some period, our share of the water. The second technical point is that they decided all of a sudden to double the capacity of the dam. This will mean a huge quantity of water in this part of the world. where the soil is muddy. We do not know for sure whether the soil will stand this heavy weight of water or the whole dam will be destructed. This is very dangerous because this will flood Sudan and Egypt a little bit. So we have to be very patient because we don't need at all to be nervous about the matter. So I hope that the policy and the diplomatic way of Egypt dealing with the matter should be understandable everywhere, and we shall continue like that as long as it takes.
Well, Your Excellency, definitely people in Egypt are very much confident in their leadership and their diplomacy. However, you can't ask Egyptians not to be nervous about an existential matter for them. But anyway, if we get back to what we are speaking about, and Arab have, or Egypt, starting with Egypt and Sudan, because it's their own right, they are addressing the UN Security Council. Why are they heading to the UN Security Council? What is exactly the reason for that, and how would that help them acquire their rights?
This is very important because we want to send a message to Ethiopia that we are not going to wait for long until we go to the next step. Because you are here threatening the Egyptian and the Arab security. Here, the United Nations Security Council is concerned about a situation like that. So, this is our next step. Now we are in bilateral and regional consultation with Ethiopia, and we hope that this will lead us to a satisfactory solution. If not, then the next step would be going to the United Nations and its Security Council to take necessary measures against Ethiopia or whoever would threat our water needs. And it is very important to make this step to make the Security Council day by day aware of what we are doing.
Well, that also makes me ask or raise the question of how binding would be the UN Security Council resolution in such a matter, and how would any resolution make Ethiopia abide by it or fulfill the obligation that comes out of it, since we've seen many resolutions by the UN Security Council that were not really taken seriously into considerations?
Not very much, but anyway, I don't want to get into details here, because the Security Council can take economic measures, can take many measures, and I don't go further. I don't want to go further. But let me say that the Security Council has the power and the capacity to issue whatever this problem needs of a solution. If Israel or the United States are famous of not abide to Security Council resolutions, this is not the rule. The rule that Security Council has all the means to impose its decisions on whatever country concerned.
How do you view the response of the international community? Let me take it from the very basis. I guess that the issue of the dam was first raised in the 1950s or late 50s, and it was raised by the United States. So how far does the international community, particularly the US, has the ability to pressure Ethiopia to abide to the right obligations towards this matter?
Take it piece by piece. If we think about Latin America, Latin America has this same problem between many countries. I lived in Brazil, where the dam between Argentina and Brazil was a case also. So we know what was going on there. if we go to Europe, Europe, of course, has many rivers which are crossing much more than one or two countries, and they know how to deal legally with such a case. So in Asia, the same thing. In North America, the same thing. In Africa, we are a sort of beginners. Africa, relatively, the countries in Africa are recently established, and they don't have the experience like in Europe or the States or in Latin America.
But
I think the majority of the world is in a position to understand exactly what Egypt is talking about.
yes, but here I made a particulation, the United States, because the United States was the one that suggested the project more than half a century ago.
Yes.
So how do you view the ability of the U.S. to mediate into this issue, to be able to pressure Ethiopia to take the right or the reasonable decision or to return to wisdom? You're reading to that.
Let me be frank here for a change. And I am against the theory of conspiracy. I am totally against the theory of conspiracy.
But that's reality. In 1959, the United States was the first one to suggest this this project or the construction.
Maybe for an innocent reason. Maybe they want to generate electricity.
Yes,
for
of course they want. Yes.
And we didn't annoy Ethiopia by refusing the project. Even Egypt, we agreed to at last to let Ethiopia build the dam. But a conspiracy to stop water running for Egypt, and we have some people thinking that the United States and Israel, of course, is behind this. I totally disagree. Israel has all the need to feel that Egypt has a surplus of water, and if I go back 20 or 25 years ago, we were thinking to give Israel some water if Israel solves the Palestinian problem and its occupation to the Golan Heights and the south of Lebanon. And it was quite clear. And for a change, it was Ethiopia who was against it. So I think Israel has a reason to support the Egyptian case in order to have surplus water in Egypt. Again, this is contrary to what some people would tell you.
Yes.
So don't think too much about the conspiracy theory.
I was just...
I want to assure you, as a diplomat, head of the Israel department in the Foreign Office some years ago, it's not a matter which I would let it in the shade. I would go to Israel asking frankly, what are you doing there? And I don't think that our colleagues in the Foreign Office can lack this sort of communication.
Right, but I was just asking about the ability of the United States to pressure Ethiopia to abide by its obligations in 2015, the good intentions, return to negotiations, sign a binding, balanced legal agreement. How do you view the ability of the United States to pressure Ethiopia go on with its obligation?
Before this, I would say that the United States has a moral obligation to support a serious agreement between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, because they called for the Washington meetings. They were trying to find a solution with us. It was Ethiopia who refused to sign the document which was briefing the results of the meeting. So I think if I can read what's going on in the United States Foreign Office, that they are a little bit angry with Ethiopia because of that. Mm-hmm. And every country has its small part of how to convince or to push a country to come to reason in any certain problem. It's not only the United States by itself, but we have the United States, we have the European Union, we have many friends here and there in the whole world in order to pressure Ethiopia or to convince, let me use the word convince, Ethiopia to come to reason.
Right. I guess that brings me to the end of the episode. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone. Thank you so much. And remains to be seen what will the upcoming stage bring us, and how would the international community pressure Ethiopia to come to reason, to come to wisdom, and think of how we can build together a future instead of continuing to destroy our people's relations. Many thanks for watching.